all renewable energies are effectively low-grade heat technologies. So if you're not asking them to replace the job of a boiler, but you're asking them to do a quarter or a third of what a boiler was doing, then you're really in business then, and you're really going to get the best out of renewable energy.
Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration, and connections from all flavours of Passive House, check out passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your questions answered, and contribute to the community dialogue. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you at one of our weekly Passive House Accelerator live webinars. In the meantime, here's this week's Passive House podcast. Welcome back to the Passive House podcast. I'm Matthew Cutler-Welsh, coming to you from Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland in New Zealand, and I'm joined this week by Zach Semke. How you doing, Zach?
I'm well, thank you.
How are things in Seattle?
They're good. It's a little cooler. We had a little bit of a hot spell, and it's a little cooler. And I'm going to get out on the water with my brother tonight. I'm looking forward to it.
Nice. And we've also got Mary James back with us today. How are you doing, Mary?
Very well. It's lovely here again.
Not too hot?
Not at all. No, it's I almost hate to say it because I know there's so many people suffering under heat waves, but it's really lovely. Although there's another very large fire burning a little south of me.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned heat waves. I've been hearing a little bit about people really suffering in Europe, particularly Spain, and other parts of across Europe and the UK. It's getting seriously hot over there, and some pretty dire consequences of that as well, which is it's not good, but we are going to be focusing a little bit on the UK and also Ireland coming up, including this week in the lead up to conference that's happening in a couple of months' time. But we'll get into that soon. But before we do, we've got a few people to thank for the accelerator, Zach.
Yes, indeed. So we want to give a special thank you to Intelligent Membranes for being our sponsor of the week this week and making all of our work possible here at Passive House Accelerator, including the Passive House podcast. I'd also like to thank our stakeholder partner, NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. Thanks too to our founding sponsors, 475 High Performance Building Supply, Ingui Architecture, Partel, Rockwell North America, and Zola Windows. And thanks to our champion sponsors, Bewizo, Cascadia Windows and Doors, European Architectural Supply, Thacro, Icon Windows and Doors, Intelligent Membranes, LG Air Conditioning Technologies, and Source 2050.
Awesome. All right. Now, tell us a little bit about Barry McCarron. Mary, I feel like he's someone that a lot of people may have heard of already.
Yes, as soon as I heard that he worked for a retrofit, one-stop shop retrofit company, I was really interested in talking to him because, of course, exploring retrofits is a big topic for me. So yeah, it's a great interview, and the company is involved in several projects that are really interesting beyond their core business. Not to be too pun intended there, but yeah.
All right, well, let's jump in just for some further context. We'll put some links into the show notes here, but there is the work by the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland, and they sort of leading the program of providing these the funding for what are called one-stop shops. So there is a scheme which Barry talks a little bit about, and they are in fact a registered one-stop shop. But let's let Barry explain more.
Welcome to the Passive House podcast. I'm Mary James, and I'm here today with Dr. Barry McCarron, Managing Director of Kore Retrofit, which is based in Kilmallock, Ireland, just a little below the border with Northern Ireland. Welcome, Barry. And first, can you tell us a little about your background and how you got involved in Passive House and especially in retrofits?
Yeah, thank you, Mary. My whole journey began maybe the best part of just over 10 years ago when I joined Southwest College, which is a further education college in Northern Ireland. They, at the time, had an EU project called CREST. And as part of that project, they were the lead partner. And because they were the lead partner, they had a capital build project as part of that EU project. And they were mandated to go after an innovative high performance building. And that building, it was chosen along the way to be built to the Passive House standard. And that was really the beginning of it for me. And then as that project progressed and as the college learned around Passive House, we decided, being a college, that we would maybe take that learning and try to offer the Passive House teaching to the local professional supply chain. And I more or less was involved in that for the next 7, 8 years, really delivering Passive House tradesperson and Passive House designer consultant training in Northern Ireland. And it went very well. And then that first project led to the college building a £30 million Passive House building to the premium standard or the premium classification within Passive House. And that at the time was the largest Passive House premium in the world. And that was really the beginning of it. And then in more recent times, I went on to retrofit my own house to the Passive House standard. And before leaving the college, was lucky enough to make some connections in North America with Humber College in Toronto, Canada, and also with Penn State University in Pittsburgh, out of one of their regional centres there. And in both those locations, we taught the Passive House course in a summer school format. And then that led then to me further on being the chair of the Passive House Association of Ireland. And last but not least, then winding up back in the private sector with Kore Retrofit, in which I'm there nearly a year now. Quite a journey, but a great one nonetheless. Yeah.
And somewhere along the line, you didn't mention this, but you got a PhD in, I assume, building science, because I understand
Yeah.
you did your research on radon levels in certified passive house buildings. And
Yeah, how could I forget those 4 painful years? Yeah, so thanks for bringing me back to that, Mary. Yeah, it was very much go back to the what I've already outlined along the way after the college had built the Crest Centre and the learning and the development of sort of the Passive House and becoming an actor there delivering the courses. An opportunity arose within the college to pursue a PhD. And thankfully, I was successful in that internally with the college. And I took myself to Queen's University in Belfast. And over the next 4 years, we were able to monitor 97, 122 homes in all, but 97 of them being certified passive houses. And that was specifically for radon. Radon in Ireland kills, unfortunately, more people statistically than car accidents, yet the car safety advertisements and stuff are never or ever present on our TVs, yet radon would be very, not, there wouldn't be a huge awareness of just how dangerous it is in all honesty. So I thought it was a good area to do the PhD in. It all came about because obviously the Passive House thing was resonant in my mind because of what I've already outlined maybe from we started. But we had a research and development project at the time with a company who specialized in radon barriers, but who were looking to diversify into the Passive House standard, ironically, because they had skills with membranes and airtightness and stuff like this and sealing floors. So it was actually coincidence that the topic fell out of an ongoing project we had, and then that. But what transpired then, or what was unique about the research, was really that, and I'll keep it high level to keep people interested, was that the certified sample that we analysed had about a 50% better outcome on average radon than standard stock, which is a clear and differentiated gap. So it's probably true to say that Passive House, certified Passive House in particular, with its airtightness and with its balanced ventilation and the quality assurance that goes alongside the ventilation, does produce lower radon levels, thankfully. And the other thing that fell out of it that was very interesting and wasn't expected to, and they say all good research should have that, was that the distribution of radon between upstairs and downstairs usually is quite a difference. Normally, radon's a heavy gas, and what you tend to find in a monitored home is that the downstairs level will be much higher than the upstairs level. And in North America, very much with basements, you expect to find a higher level or reading in the basement than you would the other floors in a home. And we hadn't accounted for that in the research. And what came out was that there was almost an equilibrium between upstairs and downstairs in the 97 passive house sample. And interestingly, they were all two-story homes. And so that was it. So that then was able to be compared against the national average, of which there was quite a good data set. I think nearly 700 homes. So there was a clear differentiation in two-story houses within the National Register. And that meant that the passive house sample having that equilibrium, that was almost evidence of a well-functioning ventilation system that was designed with a quality assurance baked into it, which all of us passive house people know and understand.
Wow, that's really interesting. That sounds like a great
Mm.
topic for a further article for us. I hadn't come across that research, so glad to hear about
Yeah.
that.
Very
Um,
good. And I'm just saying that, yeah, very much. Radon is a significant issue in certain parts of the state and certainly in Canada as well. It should get a good audience, yeah.
yeah, and so were all your certified passive house buildings in your research, were they all in Ireland?
Yeah, no, sorry, not all of them. Some of them were in Northern Ireland and also some in the UK as well. At the time, I suppose Ireland was really in its infancy with Passive House. We wanted to get a representative sample, and really we had to be up on 100 homes or thereabouts to have that representative sample. But considering that Ireland and the UK are very similar when it comes to building typologies and construction methodologies, it was fine. So yeah, but nothing outside of that area. I would have liked, if I had stayed in academia, really to potentially have leveraged some of the contacts in the States and looked at a North American, taking the methodology that I did and just replicating it really in both countries in North America would be very interesting, particularly within the Pass Fives community. Maybe this is the start of it. Maybe it happens here, Mary.
Yeah, maybe. But going back to what you're doing now, Core promotes itself as a one-stop shop for retrofits. And first of all, how did that focus come about for Core? And also, can you just talk us through what exactly is a one-stop shop for retrofits in Ireland? What roles does your company take on?
Yeah, so it's a really lovely story. Fabulous company, family run company, almost 30 years old now, really, from its origins. And again, there's two sides to the business. The first side is core insulation, that's the one that started 30 years ago. And they are a manufacturer of EPS insulation, really, and with a keen eye on innovation all the time, have developed now a low carbon EPS insulation, and they have a passive slab foundation system, which is really the calling card for the company. Moving then on through it, in more recent times, they've dipped into European projects in the form of the Circular Reno project, which we might come on to later. That's looking at bio-based materials. So again, to really just paint a nice picture of where the company's vision is, bio-based materials are very much, we feel, part of the future, and there's an eye to maybe having a portfolio or being part of a supply chain here in Ireland around that. And then the other part of the company is ourselves in Kore Retrofit, and I'm on that side of it now, and that's almost coming up on 10 years old really now. And we were the first ever one-stop shop set up in the Republic of Ireland. The government have a big initiative in play. The Green Party had been in power in the last government, and Eamon Ryan, the leader of that party, was instrumental in setting up an €8 billion fund to really kickstart retrofit in a meaningful way. And that is where the one-stop shop intervention really come in the Republic of Ireland. Core applied to I suppose, the anchor organisation for that in the Republic of Ireland is the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland, locally known as the SEAI. And as I said, Core were the first. And then really from that point on, there's been more and more actors have come into the space. I think we're up to 23 or 25 one-stop shops now. And collectively, we all have a target of 500,000 homes to be retrofitted up to a B2 by 2030, which is very ambitious. And we're around the 120,000 mark into that. And again, on the expenditure side, out of the 8 billion, maybe about 1.5 billion into it. So there's a lot more to do. But like most things, there's a bell curve and it starts to get exponential growth after a while. And we've had some really nice accelerators in recent years. In Ireland at the moment, we're also trying to bring back into play vacant homes in the countryside. So there's a significant grant of €50,000 to bring a vacant home back to life. And then if that vacant home has been derelict for 2 years, you get another €20,000 on top of that. And considering the exchange rate with North America at the moment, you're literally talking euro to dollar. So that's $70,000 if you like, to give people an idea. And then the one-stop shop grants allow up to €33,000 on top. So altogether, the package can work out for certain people in the right situation, if you want to look at it like that, with a leg up of about €103,000 to tackle their retrofit in a vacant home. Within the company, the one-stop shop side of the business is really aiming this year for around 200 of these retrofits. That's quite big
Wait,
numbers.
200 in total or 200 for this year?
200 for this year, yeah.
Wow.
Last year we hit around 150, 120 to 150 there or thereabouts. And these are all single family units typically. We are and have done in the past some light commercial and some multi-unit developments, and we're starting to dip back into that. We were successful this last week just in a multi-unit development tender that was out as well. So it's really starting to blossom, I hope. Early shoots, but looking very good on the retrofit front. I suppose the societal thing is also feeding into this. At the moment, we find that perhaps the beginning of this is starting to happen where build costs are getting so prohibitively expensive versus good to standard incomes that retrofit is starting to become more appealing as a proposition than it is to go into a greenfield site and to start building a new home. So we're starting to see for the first time in Ireland maybe a bit of a change in the culture and what people's aspirations might be about home ownership and stuff like that. So it's retrofit could have a big role to play in that.
That's great. And can you just walk us through what, say, I'm a client and I have a home that's hasn't been touched much since the 70s, let's just say. How would you, so can you just walk us through what the process would be with
Yeah,
a
so
project like that?
So a one-stop shop, it tries to do exactly what it says in the tin, really. So somebody rings in, and whether they're an experienced person in construction or they're interested in construction or not, we're able to help every sort of situation, really. So typically a homeowner is, as you described, somebody coming with a home that's obviously built in earlier years, earlier decades. And what we're doing then is really our sales team would walk them through the various options. Here at Core, we work with just over 100 contractors all in all. So if that homeowner has a contractor that is preferred, we can happily induct them and we can work with them. If they don't have a contractor, we can happily provide some to them, get quotes and different things from our supply chain and award maybe the works that way for the project. The specification and the level of upgrade is all really based on the situation of the home at the time of the conversation. So if it's in really bad repair, it might be going from what we would describe here in Ireland as an F or a G, something like that, maybe a D. And as long as it achieves 100 kilowatts of improvement, by and large, to a B2 or B3, then that qualifies as a one-stop shop. They can get as many measures as it takes to get to that bar. And we're advocates here in Core of quality retrofit. And in particular, I suppose the pinnacle of that for us is Passive House Enerfit. And if we find that there's customers doing a really deep retrofit and a big intervention on a home, a lot of upheaval, a lot of gutting out and stripping out of a home, we would be encouraging where they have a budget to do it as best they can when they're doing the work. And in that, we now have offered Enerfit from I've joined the company, and we're walking through that business model as it goes right at the moment. We've partnered with Mossart and Tomás O'Leary for the certification, with my own qualifications in-house and the general upskilling on both sides of the company. We're really moving into a position now where we'll be able to leverage PHBP and Design PH to our advantage around giving that homeowner real concrete feedback. And where there's an architect or another professional involved in these jobs, we're able to help them along as well with our own expertise. And it dovetails by and large quite well. And you're talking the typical sort of spend of a homeowner, particularly if they're not doing new or extensions to the building, is around the 60 to 80,000 euro mark, which again, for that sort of money to achieve some really high performance retrofit is quite good value for money in comparison to new build construction in my mind.
And what does the B2 energy rating mean? And also, when you said 100 kilowatt hours savings, is that in heating energy use or is that in overall energy use?
Oh, Mary, really good question. I love this. So the nerd in me will come out. What we have here in Ireland is a building energy rating, standardization of buildings. So if you're buying a home with the estate agent, they typically get a grade. So that ranges from an A to B to C to D and all of this. And it's the same all across Europe. However, each member state in the European Union has slightly different formulae and methodologies around how they do this. But by and large, at a European Union level, the steer that was given to everybody in terms of building performance was really almost passive house in different clothes. The number that we're all supposed to get to with the BER or the building energy rating is 45 kilowatt hours per meter squared. And if you dissect that, and a lot of people listening to this will understand the passive house stuff, it includes hot water in the BER calculation. So if you take 15 kilowatt hours as the heating demand for a typical home in Northern Europe, and you add a typical 4.2, 2.4 family arrangement for hot water, you're talking typically 30 kilowatts. So 30 and 15 is 45. So that's where the origins of the directive was coming from with Europe. Now, not everybody knows that. So within the BER and this B2, you're looking to hit numbers around 75 or better in that. And then within the Irish system, they're in blocks of 25. So an A1 is 0 to 25, then 25 to 50, 50 to 75. And that's typically the A bracket, and then the Bs then come afterwards. On that scale, if the whole home can go from a D or a C, and as long as it achieves 100 kilowatts, it'll qualify for all the grants that are available. So hopefully that gives you a good insight into, I suppose, the mechanics of how it works. But me being a passive house advocate in it all, I suppose one of the things that I would always advocate for is, and I've said it a number of times in this call already, is quality retrofit. And my go-to comment would be, we all know within the passive house community that there's 5 sort of key principles or criteria that one should follow to get that building physics, high performance, science-based sort of intervention. And they are good levels of insulation, thermal bridging, look after them and calculate them, detail them accordingly. Triple glazed windows for us here in the cool temperate climate in Ireland. You're making the building airtight comfortably, and you should go as well as you should because you're going to mechanically ventilate it. So those 5 move the needle. But what we try to not and steer, I suppose, our client base away from is, and some of the building regulations facilitate this, unfortunately, still, where the airtightness standards are not that high, and then also various different types of ventilation are still allowed. So it's about avoiding unintended consequences, in particular with, I suppose, principles 4 and principles 5 around airtightness and mechanical ventilation. And we also are quite precious about the thermal bridging and making sure that there's not significant thermal bridging. An awful lot of professionals generally don't understand that the more insulation you add to a fabric, the more at risk the thermal bridge can become. It is a multiplying effect the other way. So that's probably a key thing that I always try to bring up. So yeah, that's breakdown of it. Hopefully I haven't lost anybody with it.
No, no, I'm sure you haven't. I'm really curious. So, on your average home that you get called into, do you do an air tightness test initially or only afterwards?
Yeah, no, typically it comes afterwards as part of the package. I know, I know sometimes it is there as well in the early ones. So to carry out a BER, as I was telling you, to establish how much work needs to be done and to work out the specification, typically in that there is an air tightness test. But in some cases as well, the BER assessor that's conducting that is allowed to use a default for the age of the home. So that's how sometimes it's not there, but it can and does be done on occasion. And that way you have the before and after, but they're all required to have the air tightness test at completion.
Oh, that's great. And I'm just curious, is there like a average? You said sometimes you can just use the standard. So what is it that you assume?
So what you're finding now, and Jeff Colley with Pacifies Plus have done a really interesting commentary in the magazine on the Irish, I suppose, improvement with this. Building standards in Ireland in comparison to a lot of international standards is very good. And one measurement or yardstick of that you would constantly look out for is the levels of air tightness. And while a lot of us, again, the Pacifies community, we all know zero point 0.6, and now thankfully, even in my time in the Pacifies community, zero point 0.6 isn't even considered that good. There's really low numbers out there now as well at about zero point 0.1 or zero point 0.3, and that's brilliant. But what you do find in mainstream construction is they often think 4 is amazing, is a great result. So in Ireland, the sort of yardstick is 5 for the building regs, and 3 is the other sort of gateway. Which, if you're under 3, you're encouraged to use mechanical ventilation, which corresponds with a lot of other member states in Europe. Now, I don't think that's particularly good levels of air tightness, really. You've still got a lot of leakage at that level, and if you want the best bang for buck out of your ventilation strategy and different things, the best way to go about that, and the best way to get savings in a building anyway, is typically air tightness. We find as well it's getting easier. The paints in particular, the liquid membranes are really helping, I think, a lot of the supply chain achieve much better results than they were in the past. So it's an improving space. And we also have another company here in Ireland called Aero Barrier, which is a more innovative way of doing air tightness, but it seems to be coming to the fore as well. So it's getting easier.
That's great. That sort of leads into my next question, which was, are there approaches or technologies that Kore is using that has made retrofits more accessible and more cost effective for people?
Yeah, so we're looking at a whole range of things all the time, keeping our finger on the pulse. There is good evolution as well within the Irish retrofit community and industry. We have now in place a traditional homes pilot with the SAAI, who I mentioned earlier. And that traditional pilot is now, say, there's a lot of Georgian homes in Dublin, a lot of listed buildings, and a lot of the traditional sort of materials and stuff are not suitable for those types of buildings. So again, trying not to create unintended consequences and really holding on to quality assurance. That pilot is really now a very good sort of example of what can be done with very valuable buildings to our heritage and everything, and that they're insulated the correct way and that they're upgraded in a fashion that doesn't create problems. We're seeing one end of the spectrum in that area. And then on the other side, really what we're starting to see now is at the leading edge, the renewable space. So we're very much a fabric first retrofit company and really advocate for that. And very simply, it's no surprise again, talking to, I suppose, a warm audience with this. The whole concept is you reduce your energy demand, and then when you bring into play renewable energy, quite simply, they're going to go, first of all, you reduce the capital cost of the renewable energy if you have a smaller demand to meet. But what you often find as well, or where I'm a real big advocate of, is that all renewable energies are effectively low grade heat technologies. So if you're not asking them to replace the job of a boiler, but you're asking them to do a quarter or a third of what a boiler was doing, then you're really in business then, and you're really going to get the best out of renewable energy. So what we're seeing now is the heat pump evolution, which there's also a target for in the Republic of Ireland. We're starting to see real innovation there where solar PV panels and heat pumps are typically now connected. So you can get If there's surplus solar, the heat pump will turn on, stuff like this. That can also be integrated now with load management or load shifting. So you can put into play an EV car. Again, that can capture some of the solar. If there's an internal battery in a home, then again, you can get load management with that. And a lot of the white goods that we have in our homes now, you're able to turn them on and off on your phone or program them to work in harmony with whatever's going on in that matrix of renewable energy. And then the other thing that looks like it's coming onto the pitch, which is very interesting, it's been in the UK and Scotland and Wales for a wee while, is dynamic pricing, which means that on a large scale level, with grid scale renewables, with wind turbines blowing and all the rest, what you'll find is every 15-minute segment or half an hour segment, the price of electricity can fluctuate if you're on that tariff with a smart meter, which has been rolled out in Ireland now, thankfully. So people with a high quality fabric upgrade and a retrofit with really smart renewable energy can really box very smart with their home. And there, I suppose it's democracy within, I suppose, the energy space. The homeowner has got a lot of power at their disposal then with their renewable matrix alongside their fabric first retrofit. Yeah. So again, hopefully that's painting a good picture of the two ends of the spectrum. One's technology and one's the traditional space, but nonetheless, they're all moving in the right direction.
Yeah, that's great. And you mentioned heat pump technologies, and I assume you were talking air-to-air heat pumps, or are you talking air-to-water, or?
No, typically in Ireland, air to water is the premier heat pump that would be used. Air to air certainly is around as well. Ireland's a cool temperate climate, Mary, and I joke, no joke there. But what you find is Ireland's actually probably, I heard it said at a conference before that Ireland's maybe the best place in the world to have a heat pump because we are in a steady state all the time. We don't really have defined seasons in Ireland. The joke goes that the weather's pretty bad all the time, but we don't really have harsh winters and we don't really have hot summers. And the average temperature is quite consistent over the course of the year. You're probably talking 8, 9 degrees, cool temperate climate. It's perfect. So the heat pump works really well in Ireland. There is always the myths out there and a little bit of adverse commentary about these things, but that's nature, that's life.
I want to go back to, because you mentioned it, and certainly the little I read about it sounds so interesting about this circular reno project. Can you tell us a little bit about the project and about Kore's involvement in it and where you are in it now?
Yeah, it's fabulous. It's really good. It's got a number of partners across Europe. It's one of these EU funded programs. But what's really exciting about this, and previously, whenever I was in academia, I was involved in a number of projects that were similar in this scale. So it's just unbelievable luck to be in a company that is embraces that side of R&D and also I think is leaning into a really good space for the future. It's a mix of innovation in the supply chain in that here in Ireland we talk about modern methods of construction, MMC, which is really building houses and factories as opposed to building them on sites. And with the skill shortage that's out there and with the cost of materials and various bits, it's probably much better to be designing and building buildings for the factory type arrangements. What we're doing is panelized construction on this circular Reno project, and we're doing that with one of the leading housing associations here in Ireland. And we've one job already complete, or two already complete, and a number now just in progress here in the factory where I'm based here at the moment. And we're largely creating, panels following a survey of the building. And these then are manufactured off-site in our factory here. A lot of the wet trades are even conducted there and then took to site. And within a very short time frame, on the first project, it was within a 24-hour period, a complete solution delivered and with minimal interruption for the homeowner. So it's a really good test of what the future might be around retrofit and how it could be done. And there's good examples of this in Europe as well. So some of the partnership in the Circular Reno project is from the Enersprong movement stuck in Europe. So with that, and again, I've always been very taken with that, and the origin of that is in Holland, in the Netherlands, and it's very successful. So again, here in Ireland, it's still very new, it's still very novel. A lot of the construction mainstream industry wouldn't be at a level yet for large scale, I suppose, repetition and upscaling. But we all have to start somewhere, and it's no better. Yeah, it's really good outcomes out of it. And then that has led to another EU project, which we just had the kickoff meeting in Paris there at the start of the week. So that's called Agro Reno Empower Collective. So ARC is the acronym for that project, and that's got a lot of the same community in that circular Reno moving to another EU project. The journey's really starting to pick up a bit of pace around all of that.
That's so exciting. And when you
Mhm.
talked about the houses, I think you said 2 so far that you've done,
Yeah.
those were exterior panel applications.
Yeah, thanks, Mary, for running me over that again. Yeah, they're exterior panels, and I suppose the level of ambition within in the project is for to also pull out of this a whole range of different materials, and of course, a big part of Circular Reno is the supply chain for agricultural products and getting them into the supply chain in the construction industry. And we're really looking at things like chopped straw. We're looking at hemp insulation being rolled out in attics, as opposed to some of the man-made materials. So it's really going the right way, and we've some nice partnerships coming out of not directly out of that project, but indirectly as well with Eco Cocoon and various people here who are now, because of Core's progressive nature, they're starting to look at using our foundation systems in line with their systems because they know we're like-minded on lots of things and at that front running within the sector and stuff. Yeah, it's good. And another partnership that sort of has come out of that for the traditional homes would be ourselves at Kore Retrofit, and locally and well known in the Passive House community, Ecological Building Systems as well. They're actually geographically quite close to us, and they have offices in the UK as well. So we're really dovetailing hand in glove really well with trusted and good collaborations, good teamwork there, and those things as well. So yeah, it is exciting, Mary. Yeah, you said it was exciting. Sometimes we have a tendency in Ireland to just sweep that under the carpet, but it is very positive when you're talking it out loud. Yeah.
Yeah, I just am excited to hear about any initiatives that make retrofits more accessible for people. Because for a lot of people, of course, they'd love to have a more comfortable, more energy efficient home, but it's hard to afford that. But the more that we can figure out ways to implement retrofits more cost effectively, of course, then more people can afford to do it.
And there is some stuff in the financial instrumentation that look at that. And that our new project there, ARC, will have a bit of a spotlight on that sort of space. So we will look at things like ESGs, multinational companies, what their contributions need to be. And maybe down the road, there will be fresh financial incentives and instrumentation that can be baked into the retrofit supply chain around all of that. It will be very interesting to see, rather than the go-to on this without being too controversial is a lot of big corporates typically were in this whole thing of carbon offsetting, and I think there's a nice sort of bridge to take people away from that sort of thinking towards the social value as well in the form of retrofitting. So there's something in all of that, and it'll be interesting to see how that evolves in the coming years as well.
Yeah, definitely want to keep an eye on what's happening there. I really appreciate your time, and it's been great talking to you, and probably will be following up to hear more about these initiatives. And
Yeah,
thank you
yeah,
so
thank
much.
you. Yeah, not a problem. Again, yeah, we would love to be on again to chat over some of those in a bit more depth, maybe perhaps. But yeah, for now, that was very good, very enjoyable. Yeah.
And that was Barry McCarron, who is at Kore Retrofit in Ireland. Big highlights. What were the highlights for you, Mary?
Oh, there is so much there. It was uh, exciting to be talking to somebody who's working in a country, in a market where retrofits are taken more seriously and are funded more seriously rather than for many people, maybe there's a little bit of funding to help with retrofit measures, but they're often so small that it's not even worth trying to find a contractor who qualifies for them. or at least in California, that's often the experience. But here, it's reasonable to plan a business model around retrofits when there's an 8 billion euro fund for a population of roughly 5 million people out there, that can help people to do retrofits and make their homes more energy efficient, comfortable, healthy, etc. So yeah, it was pretty great.
It is pretty amazing. I mean, it's big numbers, and is what it takes to do a meaningful retrofit, which includes things like external wall insulation, upgrading windows, and then swapping out heating systems to include things like hot water and even hot water heat pumps. Solar panels feature in there as well, but I think it's really encouraging that there's so much of what is funded is all around the improving the building envelope, with insulation, wraps, and getting the building to be more efficient. Because in some instances, these will be very old buildings, and they will require a bit of work. So there's actually quite a lot of information available if you go to the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland's website. That's SEAI.ie. And there's a whole page of information about the grant amount, so what is funded and how much each item is funded for. And also there's that list of registered one-stop shops, of which Kore is one. So really impressive stuff there coming out of Ireland. What about you, Zach?
It was great to hear this interview with Barry. I had the chance to meet Barry. I think it was probably at the Wiesbaden International Passive House Conference. It might have been in Munich. And at that time, he was the chair of the Passive House Association Ireland. I think he's now the vice chair. Really fun to hear about the work that he's doing. And he's been very busy with getting a PhD and all of the work that he's been doing with the association, and then of course the good work he's doing in the world making these projects happen. I was reminded of the power of passive house levels of performance to help homeowners take advantage of dynamic pricing, or it's also known as time of use pricing. And this is something that I first heard about from Graham Irwin, who talked about the ability of a building to help homeowners become prosumers of energy, so both producers and consumers of energy, and to interact with the market of energy in a way that allows them to essentially buy from the grid when energy is inexpensive and sell to the grid when it's expensive. And because when you have a great building envelope, it means that you have a lot more flexibility about when you use energy, because you're insulated, quite literally, from the weather extremes outside. So it was cool to hear that that's something that the dynamic pricing is coming online in Ireland. I think it's a really important way for the market to, it's a really important way for us to align our decision making with the reality of the availability of energy, and to elevate the value of energy efficiency in the way that it really should be.
Yeah. Lots of really cool stuff there. And I'm also, it's just amazing that some of that, coming back to that funding of what is funded there, including the ability to identify vacant and derelict buildings and access further funding to bring up vacant buildings to a livable state, which seems like a really great option, where housing is often in demand, and there are often buildings that are there but are not really fit for purpose. And this is an amazing way that's again funded by that energy and Sustainability Authority to to help encourage someone to look at, bring those buildings, make use of what's there, and bring them up to a livable condition. So it's some really incredible stuff. Any final thoughts from you, Mary?
Well, one thing that hasn't been mentioned is airtightness. And, I thought it was interesting, a couple of things. One was that the Irish climate is such that, well, they don't really have extreme heat or cold there too much. Um, but it's keeping out moisture from the buildings. That's the huge issue. And I just thought it was exciting that that there's more airtightness products that are becoming easily accessible there. And that's helping with, even if you have just an average home, not a vacant home, but just an average home, that can be so helpful to get, an improvement in airtightness in your home. And also the other, the big thing is that their company is moving to using more biomaterials. That was such an exciting topic to explore also.
Yeah, which is tricky because some of the preferred materials for particularly external insulation are really effective at their thermal performance, but it includes things like PIR and foams, which people are looking at trying to move away from and get something that performs in a similar way, for stopping heat loss, but aren't as impactful in the environment, either from a raw materials perspective, but also end of life and circularity. So it was just tricky. So, but and like, I agree, Mary. It's really great to hear Barry talking about realizing that, appreciating it, and trying to do something about it. And I came across people in Australia recently, and people here are also and I know that people across the US are also trying to look at that challenge of how we get similar levels of thermal performance without necessarily the negative environmental impacts of some of those materials. Great stuff. All right, so that was Dr. Barry McCarron, who is, of course, in Ireland. And Mary, you've also spoken to at least one other person in that part of the world, which I'm also looking forward to hearing from. And part of the reason we're doing this is a little bit of a focus on the UK and Ireland in the lead up to the UK and Ireland Passive House Conference, which is happening in Belfast on the 7th and 8th of October. And there's some really great stuff going on in that part of the world, as we've just found out. So I'm really excited to shine a bit of a light on what's going on there and see what that sparks off. Hopefully it encourages other jurisdictions, other people, and other ideas about how we can improve existing homes and also encourage more passive house and high performance houses in other places around the world. So that's coming up over the next couple of months on the podcast. Zach, what else is going on over at the Accelerator?
Well, the Accelerator has, we are taking July and August off for Passive House Accelerator Live. That's what we do every year. So the 2024 to 25 season just ended last week. And so the action is here at the Passive House podcast and in the Reimagine Buildings Collective this summer. So lots is going on in the collective. We have Jesse Thompson from Kaplan Thompson Architects, Melissa Furukawa from Peel Passive, as well as Joe Steebrook from Building Science Corp, also known as the Dean of North American Building Science, dubbed so by the Wall Street Journal. We have all of them joining us this month for Reimagine Tuesday interviews and Ask Me Anythings. We also, if you're listening to this before July 11th, you still have time to take part in this. We're launching our Reimagine Summer Labs. So these are small groups of like 4 to 6 people who are coming together just 3 times over the course of the summer to engage with one real world challenge in healthy climate forward buildings. So from fire resilience and natural materials to AI, passive survivability, and phased retrofits. And each group will co-create an insight brief that will share key takeaways with the collective, but also will be highlighted at a special episode of Passive House Accelerator Live when we relaunch for the 25-26 season in September. So the opportunity to sign up for a summer lab closes on Friday, July 11th. And then we're also opening a new cohort for Ed May's Honeybee PH course. And that cohort is open until July 24th. So if you want to learn how to energy model like Ed May, you can enroll in that course. Just join us at the Reimagine Buildings Collective at reimaginebuildings.com.
Awesome. And I think a lot of people do want to energy model like Ed May.
I think so.
I hear his name come up quite a lot, and people be very excited about some of the stuff that that he's putting out there, some of those courses, and particularly the more open ways of doing energy model sound pretty exciting. So really great stuff there. So it sounds like the Passive House Accelerators on a summer break, but there's plenty of stuff going on and at Reimagine, and also as you mentioned, we'll keep pumping out podcasts. All right. Well, thank you very much, Mary. Really appreciate that. Great conversation. Good to see you, Zach, and we'll be back again next week on the Passive House podcast.